So here we have what we call cane. These are long lengths of white glass with a coat of purple on top and then another coat of clear glass on top of that. You can see the core of white right in the middle. We're going to lay these down on this ceramic passerelli plate so that it forms a rectangle, and we're going to fuse them together. But while we're getting these canes set up, make sure to like and subscribe, and at the end of the video, after you see how the piece turns out, let us know what you think in the comment section below. Thanks.
Sweet.
We've got to make sure to measure the length of the rectangle so that I know how long I need to make my collar. Now we're going to heat up all the canes inside of our glory hole so that they fuse together and they become one solid plate of glass. The glass will also need to be flipped to ensure that there is even heating. We want it all to be one consistent heat. So now I'm making my collar. I'm going to get a tiny bit of glass out of the furnace and make a small ring of glass on the tip of my blowpipe.
Okay, cool.
We're going to use gravity to let the glass fall back, and I'll blow my bubble so that there's a clean shot through. I don't want any glass covering the tip of my pipe.
Let me go back in. Alright, sweet. And now I'm going to go back and sit down at the bench. There we go.
We're going to make sure that there's no glass clogging the hole. And now I've got to make sure that the circumference of my collar is just the right size so that I can roll up this plate of glass into a nice cylinder and it doesn't overlap, and so that there aren't any gaps either. Corey's still working on making sure that this plate of glass is nice and hot. You're going to see him squeeze it together to make sure that it's nice and fused. We don't want there to be any gaps. We want it all to be nice and melted together, but also not stuck to the plate. Now I'm using the marvering table to make sure that this is the right size. We've got our calipers, and it looks like I'm about right.
It's a little bit smaller.
So now we've got the heat just like we want it, and we're going to go for the roll-up. Looks like my measurements were off and I was just a little bit big, so we're going to have to do some adjustments.
Alright, awesome. Yeah, I think so. But that, yeah, like I said, this is just, it's something I struggle with. I need to get better at this.
We'll try to line up the tips of this, and then I'm going to have to try to force this gap together and resize it. We don't want there to be any gaps. We want this to be a nice round cylinder, but it's difficult whenever you don't execute the roll-up correctly.
Yeah,
so already the glass is working against me.
Oh, that's right, I remember that.
Okay, cool. Alright, going to the marver.
It seems like we're all sealed up, so now I can really try to start getting rid of those ridges. In the end, we want this to be nice and smooth, because when I put my second layer of glass on top of this, I don't want it to pick up any bubbles inside of the furnace.
It's a whole thing.
Man.
I also want these canes to have a nice twist, so I'm using the table to give it that bend. And we'll continue to do this to make sure that it's a nice and tight spiral around the piece.
$7.92. Okay, cool. That means we're going to be in business.
Yeah.
I'm now going to use my jacks to seal off the piece. We're going to get rid of this little end part so that it's a nice sealed off vessel and we can start to inflate it.
Alright, sweet. That's all we need. Corey, could you save this for me real quick? sorry.
Time to try to get rid of some more of those ridges so that it's nice and smooth before we go into the furnace.
I know before, whenever I mentioned these videos, I said 45 minutes or something like that. That's like really long.
This piece was brought.
Now that we've gotten all the kinks out and we've gotten down to a nice cool temperature of 1,000 degrees, I think we're good to go get our second layer of glass. This furnace holds 700 pounds of glass, and it's at a temperature of over 2,000 degrees, so the pipe gets quite hot whenever we get this new layer of glass.
All right, coming out.
So now we use our pipe cooler to cool down the pipe so that I can choke up on it and have better leverage in shaping it.
All right, awesome. It's starting to heat up.
Now I'm going to use my block to rearrange that new layer of glass. This is a wooden tool that lives in water. The water evaporates off of it so that the wood doesn't burn, and it creates a bed of steam to move the glass.
All right, coming out. All right, awesome. Air and on.
So now we're going to start to inflate the piece. We'll have Matt blow while I cuff it with my newspaper.
And I'll take a little bit more air on. All right, off. Awesome.
We're going to let gravity elongate our piece, and then we'll start to puff it up a little bit more.
All right, Matt.
Right now I'm using my newspaper to cool down the bottom of the piece, while Matt is blowing so that it puffs up the back. We're trying to thin out that back area of the glass at the moment. And now we're going to use our fluffy torch to really accelerate the heating. When we use the torch, it will make that section of the glass even hotter whenever we go into the reheating chamber.
Okay, cool. We'll do the jack line on the next one. All right, and off. Awesome. There we go.
Now we're putting in our jack line. This is going to be where we'll separate the piece from the pipe it's currently on when we transfer it to a new pipe. We're deciding where we want the piece to break.
I'll put my paper on before we blow. Thank you, Corey. I'm good. All right, and blow.
Now we'll start elongating the piece. So we've heated up the bottom half, and we're going to let gravity drop it out.
All right, Matt, some light.
You'll see me use this tool quite often. This is about 20 pieces of newspaper in a small sleeve with a graphite layer on top.
All right, and off. I did it. It was like really thick. You know, I didn't do it.
We're going to use gravity once more to really elongate this piece as much as we can. And now we'll use the newspaper as well as a little bit of back pressure to really even out those sidewalls and push our bubble down towards the bottom of the piece.
Very light. All right, and off. Awesome. Cool.
Now we'll start to put the bottom onto the piece.
And on air, real light. Use the whole bench, back. All right, off. All right, perfect. And real light air, Matt. And off air. Does it look thin to you? You can say on. It's starting to look a little thin to me. Let's take a patch, just in case.
We're worried that the bottom of the piece is a bit too thin, so we're attaching a small patch of glass so that we'll eventually be able to put our new pipe right on this small bit that we're adding.
the worst patch ever. All right, yeah. And Matt, we'll take some air on this one, coming out.
And now we'll reestablish the bottom.
Yep, on light. Matt, can we get some light air? All right, and off.
And now it's time for the punty transfer. Corey's gotten a small gather of glass on a solid rod, and he's formed it into a small Q-tip shape, and we've put it on the bottom of our piece. Remember before when we put in our jack line, I said that's where we were going to separate the piece from the original pipe. So now I'm going to put a small bit of water right on the area I want it to break. I'll use my cold tools to shock the line I want it to break on. We'll give it a small tap, and we're free. And now it's time to open the lip of our piece and try to inflate the rest of it to match the bottom half that we've already set. I'm going to use my Sophietta tool to puff from the inside, and then I'll use my newspaper to cool down those walls.
Oh.
I don't want the lip to open up all the way. I like the natural curve that the piece has, so we're just making some minor adjustments.
All right. Fantastic.
And now it's time to prep the piece so that we can break it off of the pipe.
We got content, so we can smash this thing on the ground.
And now we're preparing to separate the piece from the pipe. So I'm putting just a few drops of water right on the end of my punty so the glass will want to break right on that line.
All right, you ready?
And now Corey will come over and we'll knock the piece off into his Kevlar gloves. We'll take our MAP gas torch and get rid of any sharp edges. And now Corey will take this to one of our annealing ovens so that it can cool down overnight. So we'll be back tomorrow to see how this piece turned out. And here's the final piece. This came out a lot better than I expected it to. I really enjoy how these lines curve around the piece and they form these cross sections if you look straight through it. There's always things to improve on, but like I said, I'm really happy with how this piece turned out. So make sure to like and subscribe and comment down below and let us know what you think. We'll see you next time.